Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. Time to get going again. One more show until there's two more shows left for the rest of the week. I don't know. Another show. All right. By the way, housekeeping note for next week. Next week, there's going to be some holes in next week. We got some doctor's appointments to take care of. Wednesday and Friday should be off the air days, at least off the air live. We'll see what we can throw together for you. There's no shortage of stories, only a shortage of time to get these stories ready for you. But, got to maintain the health. Otherwise, we can't sit around here and bitch and moan about all the terrible things that are happening. And what would we do if we couldn't do that? That's what the show's about. Well, the show's about covering what's happening in the news, why things are happening the way they're happening in the world of politics and legislation and governance. And, now you know. And the answer is Donald Trump, although to a much greater extent, Elon Musk. As a matter of fact, yesterday, Elon joining the other guy, the old orange wrinkled guy, in the Oval Office for a presidential news conference. I'm not sure why he brought the orange wrinkled guy, but I'm not sure why he brought his kid either. So that I thought was interesting. He's been accused of using his youngest son as kind of a prop. I don't know. I think he's thinking, JFK moment. I'll be presidenting and he'll climb around underneath the Resolute desk. But Trump won't let him sit at the Resolute desk as far as I can tell. I do think I saw a picture of him at one point seated at the desk, but I guess they have been shying away from that. But now Trump, as you know, is trotted out by the staff and plopped down at the Resolute desk daily to sign papers that they put in front of him and wave them around and then take free-form questions, which the press loves because they get to, make the news by shouting out dumb questions to him. And he loves because they write down the answers or record him giving the answers to these dumb questions. And then even the liberals then cut that up into little video clips and pass those around on social media. So it's a big win-win for him. I mean, it's, among the people who are passing around the video clips, they're usually saying, can you believe how dumb he sounds? Can you believe the dumb thing he suggested? Can you believe the racist thing he has just said? But, as you know, for him, any publicity is good publicity in his mind. And his mind is, of course, falling out of his ears as we speak, possibly elsewhere. But anyway, yesterday, Elon joined him for this occasion. I don't know whether this is going to happen again. I don't think it pleased Trump greatly. The young son picking his nose, actually, and hanging out, tugging on dad's jacket, interrupting the two of them as they're speaking. Elon, the more adept at dealing with it. But as I said, I think he thought JFK. The rest of us thought, Nosferatu, vampire. He's going to eat this child, drink his blood to stay young. I don't know, something like that at some point during the press conference. But it was very interesting to watch Trump's body language, to the extent it's ever interesting to watch Trump's body. And he slumping in the chair, falling asleep because he wasn't speaking, and generally scowling at the fact that he's now beginning to realize, oh my God, this was a mistake. I do this thing every day in order for there to be adulation of me, and now there's adulation of some other entity, and it bothers me. And he sat there and scowled. Elon's son picking his nose right next to him. If the germphobe stories are true, that probably didn't help anything. I did wonder whether it dawned on Trump at any point that Elon's son has a wackadoodle name. Elon did this. This is just part of the weird story. And I guess it did. Somebody noted that I guess Trump actually must have said the kid's full name at some point. I mean, they've shortened it into a nickname, but the nickname is dumb and weird because the whole name is weird. And there's a weird dynamic. The kid is known just, offhand, shorthand as X, which is, of course, the name that Elon changed Twitter to, and SpaceX, and this, XAI, and so he loves X. And so he thought, all right, why not name my child that? But the kid's full name is something like X, I don't know how they say it, XAE, something A dash XII. I really have no idea why it is. Actually, I grabbed the newspaper reports of the whole thing, but the best garbage about it was in the English tabloids, which headlined their story in the, what are we talking at, the Express. Rattled Trump angrily turns away from Elon Musk's nose-picking prop son in odd moment. Elon Musk's son, XAE A-XII, and I do not know how you're supposed to pronounce it out. And even Elon doesn't bother because he just calls him X. But that was the sort of thing that I thought, if it wasn't for the fact that Trump is generally in Elon's thrall, although I guess that's wearing thin at some point, he would be saying, what kind of a stupid name is that? Get out of here, you stupid idiot. What is this guy? What is he, one of these woke liberals or something? You would think that would be the reaction, and it probably was. But inside, he's, saying, I got to put up with this guy. Because, all right, well, anyway, he's wrecking things, and I like that, and that's pretty good. I wish the kid wouldn't wipe his nose on me, but, at any rate, it was an interesting dynamic, to say the least. Many other interesting dynamics, of course, in motion and in flux today. The court systems are beginning to react and push back on the Elon Musk-driven takeover of the federal government, calling it out for what it is. And we're having to play the wait-and-see game to see whether or not they are going to comply with the court orders. In some cases, the word is that they, in fact, have. I have a report from The Verge that says the Trump administration has, in fact, complied and restored several federal agency web pages that were taken down. On the other hand, in the stories that matter a little bit more to people, where money is supposed to be arriving in their bank accounts, that spigot has not yet been confirmed as having been turned back on in every case yet. And, of course, monitoring a number of other stories. And here to help us monitor them is Greg Dworkin. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Good morning. So I'm going to start with Michael Cohen, the author, not Trump's former fixer.
Okay. They're all authors.
Who makes the generic observation, which I think is absolutely true, starting to get this nagging feeling that America is being governed by a bunch of effing idiots.
Well, yes. It's a good idea to get.
But I want to give you the specifics, two specifics off the top that give you an idea of what he's talking about. What he was referring to is a Georgia Republican, Representative Buddy Carter, who has a new bill which renames Greenland after the U.S. acquires it as red, white, and blue land.
Oh, that does sound dumb.
I sent you like 50 countries around the world who have red, white, and blue flags, including Cuba.
Yeah, well, it's a very popular combination. It's true.
So, maybe they're all red, white, and blue, man. So that's, the idea of getting Greenland is dumb. The idea of renaming it red, white, and blue land, it makes freedom fries look quaint,
Kind of, yeah. Well,
but that wasn't the only dumb thing.
I did not expect that there was.
What's her name? Anna Paulina Luna? Florida 13?
Yes.
Nutcase?
Luna, yeah.
Luna had a press conference where she suggested that she wants to look into the JFK investigation. And because the material is going to be released as per Trump.
Oh, all right. Sure. Why not?
And she intends to bring in members of the Warren Commission as part of her JFK investigation.
Ew.
The only problem with that is they're all dead. So there's this wonderful little X tweet, people make fun of the website. I know it's run by a Nazi, but where else can you find stuff like this? Readers add context to the video of Luna talking about this. Representative Luna is unable to bring in members of the Warren Commission because they're all dead.
Well, that doesn't mean she can't.
And when you name the commission, you go, oh, I heard that name.
Yeah.
Zora Warren, who died in 1974. Richard Russell Jr., remember him, 1971.
Yeah.
John Sherman Cooper.
No, I don't.
Distinguished name who I don't remember, 1991. Hale Boggs.
Yeah, sure.
Wasn't Hale Boggs Cokie Roberts' dad? That's the only reason I remember
I think that's
him.
Right. And
Gerald Ford,
2006,
who was killed by bears. Alan Dulles, 1969. That's the ex-CIA guy.
Yeah.
What's Dulles Airport named for?
I think John Foster.
John Foster Dulles?
I think so. But you know what? I've never asked the airport.
Yeah.
So I'll go over and check it out. But it would be a weird thing to name him after the CIA director, I guess.
Yeah, who was like not super popular. And then John McCloy, who died in 1989. So they all died. You can't have them. It's stupid. But that's Representative Luna for you. That's why Michael Cohen said what he said. Well,
I mean, she may think she's bringing them in, and there may be testimony given. You just have to watch her lips and see whether, like those little hand puppets, Senor Wences.
I expect her to interview, bring in RFK Jr. and say, I don't understand. Aren't you dead?
Right. Yeah.
No, you're thinking of my uncle.
No, I think I'm how to look at your skin. I think it's you.
No, I think it's you. I think you are dead.
All right. Well, it's a thought.
Here's another stupid thing, but this is a stupid thing that resonates with a lot of stuff that we've been talking about, which is really kind of a very interesting and important dynamic, which remains completely obscure at this point, but hopefully it'll get clarified by next month, mid-month.
We'll see.
Axios had a piece circulating for Rage Clicks, which was entitled Democrats Pissed at Liberal Groups Move On in Indivisible.
Oh, yeah, okay. I may have clicked on it. I don't subscribe and it wouldn't open, so I didn't hate read it, but I guess I hate.
A closed-door meeting for House Democrats this week included a gripe fest directed at liberal grassroots organizations, sources tell Axios. Why it matters?
Yeah,
Members of the Steering and Policy Committee, with Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in the room, complained activist groups have facilitated thousands of phone calls to members' offices. People are pissed, said a senior House Democrat. The Democrat said Jeffries himself is frustrated, who are trying to stir up a more confrontational opposition to Trump. Now keep that in mind, because we need to talk about that. A Jeffries spokesperson disputed the characterization and noted to Axios that their office regularly engages with dozens of stakeholder groups, including Move On and Indivisible. Yeah. There's lots of people who are like, we got to stop the groups from doing this.
Are there?
But now here's where it gets interesting. Democrats see the callers as barking up the wrong tree given their limited powers in the minority party. It's been a constant theme of us saying, please call the Republicans. I resent the implication that Democrats are standing by passively. Now, we've had this discussion before. We had it with the Palestinian supporters.
Yes.
Why do you not call Republicans? I get that sentiment. I totally understand.
Call your representative.
Why are you only bothering us? Why do you never call the other side? If you bother everybody, okay, that's legitimate.
I guess. I'm just wondering. One, I'm wondering whether that's really the case that Democratic offices are actually pissed, or whether some of them are, but most of them are like, no, this is good because I can say 1,000 people call me.
There's no question about it. But here's the deal. Okay, you wind up calling your representative.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do.
And if you live in a blue state or a blue district, you're going to call your blue representative.
Yeah.
And if they don't like it, too bad for them. I get that you're supposed to be calling but what if you don't live in a Republican area? You're not supposed to be calling them.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, if you do and you think it's useless, don't worry about whether you think it's useless. Call them.
Call them anyway.
They dislike hearing from you, but that's good.
How do Democrats know whether or not constituents are calling Republicans? They don't. Let's say
true.
My particular representative.
Yeah. I'm getting a call now.
Johanna Hayes.
It's probably Hitler.
Connecticut 5.
Yeah.
Is in a blue district.
Right.
It's not like deep blue like Rhode Island, but it's blue enough.
You did it.
Right?
You did that.
And she's been elected 3 times.
Right.
And I've written her and said, I really am concerned about what's going on with Musk and Trump, and I want you to be more visible about discussing it.
Yeah.
That's all I said.
Well, yeah.
But who am I supposed to call? I could call
Ghostbusters.
Somebody else in Connecticut. They're all, we have.
You can call your senators. I mean, you got that.
We got 2 senators. We got 5 representatives. Yeah. We used to have 6. They're all Democrats. I could call them all.
They will just say,
and
all right,
I have
thanks.
contacted them all, and I just want them to know their constituents have their back in that regard.
Yeah.
But
all right.
if they say to me, well, why don't you call a Republican? I say to them, which one?
Yeah, who do you?
There aren't any.
Buddy Carter.
State, and I'm not supposed to be calling other states. That's really annoying.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be calling. Well, you can call anybody you want, of course, but you're not supposed to really be calling outside of your house district, because what usually happens is if they take a note of your name and address, say, in order to respond to you or something.
The first thing they say is, okay, what's your zip code?
Yeah,
where are you from?
Right. And they say, all right. And sometimes they tell
Oklahoma?
you, sometimes they don't.
But, and they hang up on you.
Yeah, well,
they don't.
They're not supposed to, but they take a note, and they usually they don't tell you necessarily that they're going to do it, but they forward it to the person who's representing that zip code and say, here, you want to talk to this person and respond to them, and it's their business.
If it's
okay. It doesn't hurt anybody. Well, and we used to do it in the house, too. You just find out which district the person's from as a courtesy and say, here you go, neighbor or person from Oklahoma. Somebody called me and said this.
Oklahoma. I mean, because if I call Johanna Hayes, I don't want Johanna Hayes saying, hey, find out who's representing this district and give it to them. You are.
That's all right. Well, if you're from that, if you got the right zip code, they just say, all right, we'll answer you.
Now, typically, 40 to 100 calls is enough to get their attention.
Yes.
And they're getting thousands.
Yes, it doesn't take much.
Also said we're getting thousands in Alaska. So we know they're calling.
That's everybody in Alaska. Right.
But they're calling she's a Republican. We know that she may call herself an independent, but she's a Republican.
Yeah, then you're right.
So we know that they are calling Republicans.
If you know, you know.
So that's kind of a dumb storyline.
All right.
What's important is underneath it.
Oh.
Okay. And that is that in March, we're scheduled to have a continuing resolution run out.
Yes, right.
So the government has to be funded.
A month from now, pretty much, yeah.
How do you do it?
Just do it. Just turn on the computer.
Like another continuing resolution kicking the can down the road. That's a traditional way to do it.
Right.
I mean, you could get 12 spending bills or 14 or however many there are, but they never do.
Right.
Okay. So point being that because Mike Johnson is such a wuss and is such a coward and is not good at his job other than saying, oh, whatever Trump does is good, he doesn't usually have the votes to pass anything of note.
Right.
He gets conflicting advice from his various caucus factions, and he can never get a majority vote to pass something. Therefore, he has to do it with Democrats.
Yes.
Therefore, in theory, Democrats should have some leverage over Mike Johnson about getting something rather than just saying, okay, well, we'll pass this with all of the Democrat votes and 5 Republican votes.
Yeah.
Just to keep the government going, because we're responsible people, and Merck's law says that if anything fails, it's our fault because we're the only responsible adults in the room. Mm-hmm. That's the dilemma they have themselves in. So Hakeem Jeffries knows this is coming, would like to have some leverage, but as Joe Biden used to say, here's the deal. Mm-hmm. Whoever is seen as responsible for shutting the government down is the one that gets blamed by voters.
All right.
Therefore, Democrats cannot be seen in the minds of their leaders as eager to shut the government down.
All right.
So you hem and you haw, and you don't make demands in advance, and you don't get out there and say, if you don't do this, I'm going to withhold my vote, because that makes it look like you're responsible for shutting the government down. Mm-hmm. That's exactly the opposite of what all those calls want them to do. So you got to balance that somehow.
Okay. I will do that.
How?
I will. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I will tell you I have a very major plan to announce.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, well, for one thing, the time in between then and now has to be about education, which means it's about repetition, which they've already told they have given us this message for months that since all the way into last year, and the continuing resolution passed.
My very quiet representative Johanna Hayes had a press conference yesterday in which she was introduced and said, I'm here because I am a former teacher of the year, and what they're doing to the Department of Education is unconscionable. I mean, they're doing it, whether it's covered or not in the news. They are doing their best to get that message out.
Yeah. So they need to do that. They need to remind people.
I was seeing locally. Is what I'm saying.
If the government shuts down, the majority party is the one responsible for passing these budgets. And
should be. So long as you don't, push everybody out of the way and say, no, I did this.
Right.
And so Democratic politicians who are relatively geared in, tied in, tuned in to how people feel about what they do are careful about this. So you have to give them a little leeway about that. They have to say back to you, yes, I totally heard you. I understand what you're saying is that you want us to take the lead in making sure that what Trump is doing is going to be stopped. We're doing that in the courts. We don't have the votes to stop it in Congress. And just shutting Congress down by insisting that every vote in the Senate gets a roll call and that, we take as many 30 hours or as many hours as we get in each individual situation to stretch things, to make Congress crawl to a halt, that makes it look like we're trying to shut the government down. We can't be seen as doing that. And we as politicians have to explain to you, the constituents, I know what you want. I want the same thing. But the way you're suggesting that I get it done is not going to work for the following reasons. Instead, this is what we're doing. But, it's tough. It's a tough sell.
Yes, and that's it's funny because that's always been the reason why members of Congress have been traditionally, I think, reluctant to share procedural knowledge and understanding. Some of them don't have it, of course, but those who do, somewhat reluctant to share it with constituents because what very often happens is people understand about 30 to 50% of what gets said, and then they start demanding that the part they understood happen over and over and over again. And I didn't catch the other part about where other things matter, so whatever. I heard you say something about things need 60 votes. Well, filibuster everything. Well, sometimes that doesn't make sense, or sometimes it just doesn't help anybody do anything. I know people get angry when they reach or allow for unanimous consent to call debate to an end and vote on somebody as the weekend approaches. And I understand why, but it sometimes comes from that. I wanted you to filibuster everything. Well, yeah, what would have happened is we would have filibustered it and used the 30 hours, and the 30 hours would have ended late on Saturday, and then the person would have been confirmed, and then we would have come back to work on Monday with them confirmed.
What happened in a number of these cases.
Yeah, so you say, all right, well, instead we'll go home and meet with constituents and strategize with you guys and figure out what it is you want us to do. And when we go back on Monday, the same thing will happen. We will not have wasted our time here.
Which I think you made it is an important one, and whether you made it inadvertently or not, I won't
almost
say.
certainly.
It's not up to me to say.
I don't even remember the point.
May have planned on this all along, but after 30 hours, the inevitable happened, and the point that the Democrats are making is when you don't have the votes, it doesn't matter whether or not you filibuster. It doesn't. You're not going to convince Republicans to vote with you by looking tough.
Well, that's true. Then that was never
not
the point.
how it works.
No, but if you wasted Monday through Friday dragging things out, that's the most you can do. Yeah, that's fine. And to me, when you've gotten yourself to the end of the week and everybody is going to leave town, but you leave town with a person confirmed to office on Friday afternoon rather than Monday morning. That doesn't make a big difference.
None of your constituents really care about that at all. They don't care about procedure. One of the reasons you can get away with not explaining procedure to constituents is they don't know, they don't care, and if you're explaining procedure, you're losing.
I guess so. Yeah, sometimes true. The value, of course, of teaching people procedure is sometimes they get it and they get the right part for how many years, we can't do anything about the filibuster.
I like learning it. That's why I pester you all the time.
Oh, all right. Well, I was wondering why that was.
I just like hectoring you, too. I mean, it's just different.
I just figured just let the guy go here. All right. Fine. All right.
But, anyway, so that is going on. I think it's important. I think it's an important dynamic which still has to play out. And I don't think
we have no choice.
The people who are protesting, totally appreciate that. At the same time, I just think it's ironic that Democrats are looking at their constituents and saying the same things that they were saying to uncommitted and others who were just protesting Democrats but not Republicans. Yeah. I mean, at least they're not saying, okay, you got what you wanted. Are you happy now? That would be not politically wise, although it would be emotionally satisfactory, satisfying. But you can't. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And Dearborn is not why Harris lost Michigan. It had to be everybody voting against Harris for, in every constituency of the Democratic Party for Trump to win, and that happened. And so, don't just blame that. At the same time, the fact that Trump is sitting there saying, look, I maybe don't want to own Gaza. I don't really care one way or the other. I just want it to be the Israeli Riviera. What's the problem? And King Abdullah of Jordan says, well, I got a problem with that, but I'm just not going to say it to your face. But as soon as I'm done with this press conference, I'm giving a statement saying I got a problem with this.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that was an interesting dynamic, although I didn't think that he had backed off any on the ownership of Gaza. But maybe who knows, word salad. But yeah, I guess, and having seen that situation, the president of Egypt says, see you later, not coming.
Well, he's trying to empower Netanyahu, and that's going to be bad.
Yeah, well, sure.
If they're not released by noon on Saturday, all hell will break loose. What does that mean? Nothing good.
Are we up to that again? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Or / not great.
It's exactly what the right wing in Israel wants.
Hi, everybody. This is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, beliefs, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everybody could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together. And by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com. Secure, recurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show in the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Something else has gone wrong. You pick it. I don't know. There's 16, 20 things. But the next big thing is fill in blank.
We talked about it on the break a little bit, so let's just cover it.
All right.
From New York City, there's a mayor, Eric Adams. He's a corrupt doofus. And he was indicted for corruption by the Department of Justice. But now that there's a new president, President Donald Trump's Justice Department directed prosecutors in the corruption case to drop the charges against Adams.
Whoops, I dropped them.
And so Adams gave a press conference yesterday saying, see, I said I never broke the law and I never would. And so, yeah, you should drop them. And so everybody in New York City said, all right, what'd you get for that? Why are you being Donald Trump's toady? Mm-hmm. We don't trust you. You need to go. Kathy Hochul, the governor, who's not much better than you, not corrupt, just useless, needs to get rid of you. And so that's the current status of politics in New York City.
Yeah, and I do understand that there's some kind of methodology by which in many states that's not a real thing. Get rid of the mayor, but I guess there is one in New York. I don't think that's coming anytime soon.
So here's a piece from The Atlantic. What Trump is getting from Eric Adams, the mayor bent the knee. His reward has arrived. What a glorious time to be an ethically challenged politician, it starts.
True.
President Donald Trump began yesterday by pardoning Illinois' eminently corrupt former governor Rod Blagojevich.
Blagojevich, right?
Blago? Who tried to auction off U.S. Senate last night. Trump extended his mercies to the indicted New York Mayor Eric Adams. The message is twofold. Prosecutors are not to be trusted, and bowing to Trump will yield rewards even for newly minted loyalists. Maybe the bigger story today, the bigger picture big story today, is the Trump administration essentially, to the extent that they can, are codifying and legalizing bribery, graft, and corruption. They want to get rid of the rules that say that companies aren't allowed to take bribes overseas. Trump says that makes them anti-competitive, but actually it's a protective mechanism. Yes. For when they are extorted, they could turn to the extorter as the extortee and say, look, I'd love to take this bribe, but I can't. This law in the United States says I can't.
Yes, or pay this bribe.
And so there's no wall between the people trying to corrupt businesses and the CEOs and whatever. So that's bad, but that's been done. You have Trump dropping charges against people who did bad things, from J6 to Eric Adams. Yeah. And basically what he's saying is also, I'm going to sue you for something and you'll have to settle. And the reason I'm doing this isn't because I have a legitimate lawsuit. It's just a way for you to bribe me legally, because settling is perfectly legal. There's nothing you could do about it. There's nothing anybody could do about it. And I just want to announce that that's what's going on so everybody knows. So that everybody will
there is
pay
something.
Me.
Yes. I think there are things that somebody can do about it. They're not doing them, but they don't guarantee anything. But yeah, that's a very interesting invention of his, at least in using it in this fashion. I've really never seen it done this way and really contemplated that it could be done this way. But yeah, file a frivolous lawsuit. That's usually not a very good strategy, because people say, oh, it's frivolous, I can get it dismissed. But then if you just choose not to and pay it anyway, well, what do we do about that? Well, ordinarily, now those settlements are subject. They're usually almost always 100% of the time rubber stamped, because if the two parties want it, the judges are not likely to want to stand in the way. They don't want this case. But judges can reject settlements and just say, I suspect that there's something horrific happening here beneath the scene. This is unconscionable as a settlement. I won't sanction it. Now you could have the people drop the suit. Settlement. Yeah, right. That's true.
We've seen it with some of the settlements with the Sandy Hook families, where the judge said, "I'd like to, but I can't. There's stuff, process stuff around here that just isn't allowing me to do it." Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, there's a couple of examples that I completely forgot about, but only for a second. Thank you for reminding me. That's true. All right, so you've seen it before, just as well. We've seen a lot of these things that are cropping up again before, not always being called out for that reason on the show, but yeah, okay, good examples.
Well, I'm not so old that I forget things, everything.
I am.
What I forget is, I remember the example, but I get it wrong, so you get to correct me. And this one, the Atlantic story has this interesting codicil to it, which I think is also really subtle and important and doesn't get enough play.
All right.
When they said that they're dropping the charges against Eric Adams, they also said that they reserve the right to reinstate charges at any time.
Oh.
That means you better toe the line or you know what's coming.
Okay.
That means
I thought they did the opposite.
Nice city you have here. Be a shame if something happened to the mayor.
I was surprised. I must have misread it, because I thought that they said they had dismissed it with prejudice, meaning that it wasn't likely, you can't reinstate the charges. And I thought, well, why would they do that? Wouldn't they want to maintain leverage? So maybe it was either I misunderstood, maybe the reporter who I read misunderstood. Maybe it's possible. Can't dismiss the possibility that Trump's DOJ lawyers said, oh, that's what prejudice means? Crap. I just wanted to dismiss them with prejudice because I'm prejudiced against him. I hate him.
The memo from the Justice Department's acting number 2 official, Emil Bove III, one of the defenders, I think, in the impeachment stuff, says the agency reaches a decision without assessing the strength of the evidence.
Because why do that? We're only the DOJ.
And he said that the Justice Department reserves the right to reinstate charges against Adams at some future date.
Tomorrow.
What does that mean?
Yeah, that's usually a dismissal. I mean, unless I'm getting my memory of it backwards, but dismissal without prejudice. But now I'm questioning myself. All right, well, I should be questioning them. But their intention, Justice Department went
out of its way to say we could put it back at any time.
Yeah,
you know what that means, Mayor Adams, even if everybody else doesn't. So we're reminding you.
Yes. Right. Okay.
Be a good fellow and do what we ask.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I thought that they were going to do. I just don't know whether I saw the report incorrectly, read it incorrectly, or, like I said, it is entirely possible that they wrote down, yes, this case is dismissed with prejudice. That means we can bring it back, right? No, wrong. Oh. I mean, the story from the other story from the courtrooms over the past couple of days for things that haven't yet been ruled on has been that the DOJ has, in like 3, 4, 5 concurrent cases, had to make major corrections to their pleadings, and the judges are like, this is the total opposite meaning of what you filed on Monday. I was getting prepared to rule this thing, and you're telling me, oh, by the way, I made a mistake. We actually, did violate the law, or or told you the wrong thing, or gave you a set of facts that was designed to make you rule in our favor, but we just found out we were totally lying.
I have that one. This is from Talking Points memo.
All right.
David Kurtz wrote it up yesterday.
Great.
And said Trump is predictably sloppy, and it's hurting him in court.
Yeah, that's why I wonder. I mean, again, with paperwork, they may have dismissed this thing with prejudice and not understood what they did. We really have to look into that. But go on.
Overnight, the Justice Department had to file 2 separate corrections in pending court cases to clean up misstatements of fact they made to federal judges in open court. It's an excruciating thing for a lawyer to have to do, but especially for the Justice Department, which has prided itself on being a reliable narrator and has earned, for better or worse, the benefit of the doubt in federal court. Now, the significance isn't entirely clear, but they undermine the Justice Department's credibility and make it clear that the judges involved, that these are not careful, considered, prudent government actions, like, Justice Department dropping charges on Eric Adams. In the Treasury Doge case, the Justice Department now says it was mistaken when it told the court that resigned associate Marco Iles was a special government employee. He wasn't. He was, in fact, a Treasury Department employee.
Oh, wow. All right.
In the USAID case, the Justice Department admitted it was wildly wrong when it told the court that 500 employees were placed on leave when the real number was 2140.
Yeah,
it also mistakenly told the court that only future USAID contracts have been frozen when, in fact, all of them were.
Yeah. See, this is a recurring problem for them, and it gives you pause that now I want to. I mean, again, I just quick looked at an Eric Adams story, and the reporter says they were dismissed without prejudice, but now I need to go read the order.
The pace of the destruction unleashed by the White House, combined with this disorganization, ham-handedness, lack of involvement from lawyers at the front end, has created an enormous mess for the Justice Department to try to clean up in real time in court, and it's not been pretty. Think about Trump shooting his mouth off about Gaza and then refusing to back down because you never back down, and it may unleash a new war in the Middle East because of his words.
Yes.
So you got to take responsibility for it. It's the Democrats' fault because why? You did it.
I don't like Democrats. That's why.
That's why. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I mean, not okay. It's not the way it works. But yeah, it's really rather amazing that we're constantly in this position, and and it's, I guess you could say, possibly part of the design, although it may just be it's one of those blunders that's the fact that we'll be floundering around in court and causing confusion Yeah, I could see Steve Bannon types saying, that's actually good, even if it ends up losing some cases. Yeah. I like the fact that no one knows what's going on, and we're such chaos agents.
Pee Wee Herman, I meant to do that, but no, you didn't.
Right. I meant to not pay attention and care very much. Okay, that I might believe.
So Matthew Iglesias touches on hapless Mike Johnson. That's his first name, by the way. Mike is his middle name. Hapless is his first name. The paradox of Trump's first weeks is Trump grabs power, congressional Republicans' legislation is treading water. Mm-hmm. And again, this he touches on stuff we started with. Conservatives are enthusiastic about his apparent level of political mastery, and Democrats of all stripes are feeling despondent. There's pressure on congressional Democrats to vow to shut the government down unless Trump starts spending duly appropriated money. And as we talked about, that's exactly the last thing you want to suggest Democrats to do. If you do it reluctantly.
That can be done.
Not because we are enthusiastically wanting to do it.
Enthusiasms.
No, we don't have
There's also countervailing pressure from leadership to avoid looking too eager to stage a shutdown. I see both sides of the argument here, says Iglesias. On the one hand, there's generally no point negotiating a bipartisan appropriation bill if the president's going to ignore its terms. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, in recent political history, whatever party is seen as wanting a shutdown ends up taking the political blame. Democrats have to be somewhat careful about how they approach things, and there's no obvious winning strategy. At the same time, I want to push back on the idea I've heard from a wide range of quarters that all this proves Trump is some kind of political mastermind. No. His approval rating is a bit better than it was at this point in 2017, but it still means he's less popular than every other newly elected president in mid-February in, history. Taking office with a flurry of executive orders isn't a new idea, and the actual dollar sums of money involved in Trump's actions are smaller than Biden's. Most of all, the frenetic pace is serving, at least in part, to obscure the extent to which congressional Republicans are spinning in circles because they don't know what to do with budget reconciliation.
Yeah.
So budget reconciliation is really boring, which is a totally perfect topic for Matt Iglesias' sheet that he publishes, which is entitled Slow Boring.
Yeah.
Because those are the types of topics he chooses to take on. But this process issue of reconciliation is phenomenally important.
Yes, I thought you were going to say phenomenally boring, but that's true too.
It may be, but it's phenomenally important, and it's probably the keystone on how the Trump administration is going to go in the first year.
It's all there is. Trump has it in his head that there should be one bill passed by Congress, and that's it. This one. Doesn't work that way, but you could do it that way. You could just not pass anything. Of course, if you come up with something like, can we make it illegal for people I don't like to buy new underwear? We could pass that bill. That doesn't make any sense, but all right. I assume he'll come up with other ideas along the way. But he seems attracted to this idea of doing one big bill and cramming all the things he intends to do into the one bill, and then I guess giving Congress the rest of the time off. I don't know, but they're scrambling to try to figure out a way to give him what he wants, even though it doesn't make any sense at all. Why would you do it then? Why can't you do it in 10 bills? That's stupid what you're asking us to do. Right. I don't know. He asked, so we have to do it, and they're having trouble.
Iglesias makes this point. The whole political foundation of Trumpism is built on the idea that culturally conservative old people can vote Republican without fear of their retirement programs taking a hit. And Trump wants to cut taxes rather than raise them. So that's Trumpism. But he also promised to bring down the cost of living, which he's not doing with eggs. No. And he's not doing anything about bird flu. And he's not doing anything about helping because he's doing tariffs, and that's going to hurt.
And he's not
has to acknowledge that the cost of money is part of the cost of living, even if it's not included in the official inflation statistics. So if interest rates go up rather than down, people will get hit. They'll notice. And it's also going to continue crimping the housing supply. So while Republicans can run on a 2017 playbook of doing a huge deficit, increasing tax cut, the merits and the politics of it are much more difficult. And Republicans right now really don't know what they want to do.
All right.
They don't know. And so that's why Mike Johnson is going to need Democratic help to pass stuff. So all of that is background. Mm-hmm. And Republicans are talking about how to achieve $2.5 trillion, let's not exaggerate, in spending cuts without touching Social Security, Medicare, or defense. But they might do it anyway.
Yeah, well, they love touching things. That's what they... Oh, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, they know what they mean.
Yeah. Do they?
Right.
I don't know. But
yes. $2.5 trillion is a promise to right-wing members of the caucus to get them to vote for a debt ceiling increase. One possibility is they drop the debt ceiling increase. They structure the tax package with no spending cuts at all. They just increase debt. Then they have to ask Democrats to vote for a debt ceiling increase because right-wing House Republicans won't vote for it. And then what kind of leverage do the Democrats have anyway? But separate from the mechanics of the debt ceiling, there's the question of reality. The $2.5 trillion in cuts that they might or might not do isn't enough to cover any version of Trump's tax promises. Meanwhile, Senate Republicans are ahead of their House colleagues. The Budget Committee Chair, Lindsey Graham, has already written the text of a reconciliation bill, which Mike Johnson said is dead on arrival in the House.
Oh. Well, they hate each other.
What's going on here? So beyond the tactical dispute, I think is a question of substance. Graham is a defense hawk who wants to see the GOP trifecta significantly increase military spending. That is to say, House, Senate, and White House. Right. He's aware that many of his House colleagues don't share his enthusiasm. Under the circumstances, the odds are pretty high. The House's one big bill comes together. The idea of raising defense spending falls out. All of which is to say Republicans have made basically no progress whatsoever on tax legislation because the factions can't agree.
Yes. They're
well, what the hell is supposed to do, you moron?
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially, that was just from the conference that they just held.
All right. Still, while there may be a sense in some quarters that Trump has just done all that much compared to Biden, that's actually not true.
No, nothing has happened.
Republicans are making very little progress, which is not to minimize the reality that Trump is doing harmful things. He's jeopardizing tens of millions of lives. I mean, PEPFAR alone is jeopardizing tens of millions of lives.
Right.
It's also true, I think, that Trump has been able to consolidate mainstream Republican support for his unlawful behavior in part because Republicans don't have a viable agenda.
Okay, yes.
So, it's not like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, you should be doing... They don't have anything. And when you don't have anything, it's like, okay, well, whatever you want to do, we have to look like we're doing something, you're doing something, let's get behind it.
I suppose, yeah. Does that count for? I guess in some people's mind that counts as doing something. I don't know, have anything to do, but I agree with what that guy did.
Hey, whatever Doge is doing,
whatever
Harmon's, at least they're doing something. We're doing nothing.
Let's watching
get behind
them do
that
it, though.
And say this is a Republican initiative, and we bask in the light of getting something done. Those are capital letters. When in fact we're getting nothing done. So again, that's a lot of background to what's going on here.
And I assume at some point when the full impact of some of this becomes clearer to people and they say, I don't like what Doge and others were doing, it's actually terrible, then all the Republicans will expunge the record and say, right, I was against that anyway. I didn't want that. You're on the record here saying you were in favor of it. Well, I'll have Doge erase that damn quick.
Right.
See whether it works.
Right.
Okay. I mean, there really is nothing going on. And part of, by the way, that's part of the trouble that congressional Democrats are having with being pressured to oppose everything or slow everything down is that there's nothing happening. There's nothing for me to slow down. There's nothing to object to. We're naming some post offices in the meantime, and I guess I could object to some of that.
Yeah, I mean,
they're not legislating out in the open
Congress
here.
That's happening,
right.
And we don't have the votes to slow down the White House. So you're asking Congress to slow down the White House when we're in the minority.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to tell you, it just doesn't work that way. And you may not want to hear it, but it just doesn't work that way.
Sometimes people have confused it. Like, why don't you object to or filibuster what the president is doing? Well, he's not bringing it to us. We can object and scream about it, and I am doing that. Yeah. But there's nothing on the House floor
but we don't have the votes to
makes
make
this
it
happen. Right. Well, anyway,
all we can do is have a separate,
that doesn't mean there's nothing to do.
Committee investigation and then call a press conference. That's about all we can do.
Yeah. So they are doing it. Well, people that, well, why don't you do that? Well, I did it yesterday. I have another one scheduled today. Why didn't you tell me that? So I didn't have to call you. All right. I did, but okay. Thank you for calling. Thank you for calling, Greg. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye.
Yeah. Well, this is happening. It's wacky. What can you do?
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing us up to date, though.
Anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, you know that weird thing where I put a bunch of things and you only see one or two of the mess? It just happened to me.
Aha!
I sent you a whole bunch
I was
of stuff,
crazy.
And I only see one thing that I sent you, but I know I sent you more than that.
I see them. No, wait a minute. I'm in Monday. Yeah, maybe that happened again. Let's see. I scrolled up before, and then...
there it is. Okay, now I can see it.
I see the flags. Is that what you saw before? Or now you see a bunch
of
things?
Now I can see everything.
All right, that's good.
It was separated by the call started message.
Yes, all right.
Which is confusing.
Yeah. All right.
After the call started, I sent you two things.
Got them.
Anyway, we covered them both. That's it.
Oh.
I don't have anything else.
All right.
I'll see you tomorrow. Okay,
well, that's a good time to see you. And I can tell you something. You might be interested in this, too, after the break. I guess kind of unrelated to the sort of politics that we usually cover, but related to the politics in general, which is why we will cover it. News from the Super Bowl coverage.
Yeah.
That it was the most watched Super Bowl in history, which is, I guess, not terribly surprising, but more to this point, that it was the most watched halftime performance in history, which is of interest to me because MAGA and Doge and other assorted acronym weirdos have been running around saying, it was the worst ever. I don't understand it. I couldn't hear the lyrics. Didn't make sense.
Talked about it
I don't know who that
Gen
was.
Z, rules, and you're not Gen Z, and you don't get it, and shut up.
Not only Z, but apparently the alphas. I've been seeing all these videos of basically, millennial and older Americans sitting videotaping themselves watching the Super Bowl, which I never really understood that as an activity, but all right, put it on TikTok now. I don't understand this guy. Who the hell is he? But the kids, and I mean here, teenagers or younger, not only are going crazy for it, but know all the lyrics and are reciting them along with them.
And they know all about the feud between him and Drake.
Right.
I mean, they just know all about it.
And I'm only vaguely aware of the fact that
that exists. Of the halftime show.
Yeah. And so guess what? So the thing I wanted to tell you about it is that Darwin has sent us a segment. I've got something that I'd like to play in the second half of the show, going over an article, basically explaining the whole thing. But he's quite aware. Basically, he says there's a certain segment of the population that might not have entirely understood what was going on, the significance of what was going on, the significance of so many other people's interests in what was going on. But if you want to know what's going on in this country, you're going to have to pay a little attention to this entertainment focused story. But it's a thing, it's a real thing, and the eyes of millions are on it. And if you want to know a little bit more about it, I'm gonna roll that segment. I was very appreciative of his having sent it this way. I was aware of the players, the fact that there was a feud, something about what the nature of the feud was. But yeah, if you found yourself out in the cold, you might want an explainer on that. But
absolutely.
If you found yourself out in the cold and you think that's because they're wrong and I'm right, I have news for you.
Right, absolutely. Anyway, that's very good, and I'll look forward to it, and take care.
All right, very good.
And just, stick to classical music, none of this woogie boogie stuff.
Yeah, right. They should bring an orchestra out and play Proud to Be an American or whatever that stupid song is. All right, great. We'll catch up with you tomorrow.
That's a Chico Marx reference.
No, well, I figure that almost anything that I don't instantly react correctly to is a Marx Brothers reference. Right.
You can absolutely count on it.
Got it. All right.
I say we take up the tax. Anyway, I'll see you.
All right. See you tomorrow. And all right, so I'll roll. I got to wait until after the break because it's a lengthy segment. It's because he's picked out a good and thorough piece to read and explain for our edification. But I'll need 10 minutes for that one. So at any rate, you can look forward to that after our next break. In the meantime, what might we be able to shoehorn in between? Well, nothing whole anyway. But I guess I'll give you the story that I referenced right at the top of the show about the proceedings in court and the word that there is, in fact, at least some compliance with court orders. The Verge, TheVerge.com, reporting this one under this headline: the Trump administration restores federal web pages after court order. And my initial read on that was, all right, let me check this out and see. Do they need to change their headline to the Trump administration is ordered to restore federal web pages but hasn't yet done it? And it turns out, no. The lead paragraph of Justine Kalma's piece here reads, the Trump administration brought, past tense, brought web pages back online, meeting a court-ordered deadline at 11:59 p.m. on February 11th. So that seems pretty definitive. And by the way, I checked on the Justice Department memo. It does say dismiss without prejudice. I just misread it or misremembered it along the way. So what's this suit about? Doctors for America, DFA, which represents physicians and medical students, filed suit last week against the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, and the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, for taking health data off government websites. A federal judge granted a temporary restraining order. They didn't bother to tell you that that's abbreviated TRO, setting a deadline for those agencies to make that information available again online. And guess what? They did it. The order includes more than a dozen CDC and FDA web pages that were specifically mentioned in the lawsuit. That includes the Social Vulnerability Index. You could see how that might be of special interest in targeting by the anti-woke folks, and the Environmental Justice Index, for example, both of which are tools that show whether particular populations might face disproportionate health risks. So easy target for the Trump administration to go after, or to choose to go after. Hard target to keep down because judges actually follow the law and have an interest in people being able to see government information. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Edwards Radio. Let's continue reading through The Verge's report of some actual good news and some actual compliance with court orders in the DFA, Doctors for America case. A judge issuing a temporary restraining order that the result of which was an order to bring back online information at CDC, HHS, FDA, and other websites. I think those are the websites. But the suit by DFA was against OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, and the orders were that by 11:59 p.m. on the 11th, right before midnight yesterday, those things had to be back online, and they were. If you, take the reporter's word for it. And I don't know why you shouldn't. DFA alleges that the agencies violated the Administrative Procedure Act and the Paperwork Reduction Act, the Administrative Procedure Act, the APA. Some people like to abbreviate it that way. You'll be hearing an awful lot about, and in fact, you have heard an awful lot about on this show. You just might not realize exactly why. I'll tell you in a second. But the DFA alleged that the agencies violated the Administrative Procedure Act and the Paperwork Reduction Act by removing public access to the web pages without giving adequate notice in advance. The CDC, FDA, and HHS didn't immediately respond to requests for comment from The Verge. How is it that I could possibly sit here and tell you that you've been hearing lots or have heard lots in the past about the Administrative Procedure Act, when in fact I have probably only read the name 17 times on the air? I don't know. I don't always necessarily point out the provenance of this thing, but if you may remember the catchphrase, and I saw somebody repeating it and discussing it in an article this morning on Blue Sky, and I retweeted it along with a little hashtag, a little KITM hashtag, and the if you know, you know hashtag. the catchphrase that will probably jog your memory, which comes from out of the Administrative Procedure Act, or at least grows out of the jurisprudence stemming from the Administrative Procedure Act. What is the standard by which in 90+% of Administrative Procedure Act cases, judges are meant to decide whether or not you have violated the law? And the catchphrase, arbitrary and capricious. Does that make sense to you? Does that ring a bell for a lot of you? That's come up a dozen times in the history of the show, but you have to be a long-term listener. If you've just joined us since, say, the Trump administration returned to power, however you want to describe that, it's possible we may have mentioned it once or twice since then. But if you're a long-time listener, arbitrary and capricious is the test that they're looking for here. Has the decision been made on a sound jurisdictional basis, or was it arbitrary and capricious, or was it motivated by pecuniary interest, impermissible pecuniary interests, bribery, etc., personal gain, benefit in that sense, or was it just outright dumb and baseless? Arbitrary and capricious. That's where it comes from, the APA. The agencies started taking web pages down after President Donald Trump signed an anti-trans executive order, which he styled defending women from gender ideology extremism. You can't even imagine him pronouncing this out loud. Well, I guess you can. It would go like this. If they put that up on the teleprompter screen, he would say, and my order is called deafening women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government. Okay, he would struggle through it. LGBTQT. Cutie. Hey, cutie. I'm getting distracted here. Okay. Well, anyway, the stupid title of his anti-trans executive order doesn't really matter. It was a dumb order. It doesn't entitle you to do dumb things. But they said, well, he hates transgender people, so let's take down information that has anything to do with transgender issues. Have transgender people, among many other people, been harmed by, environmental injustices? Yes. Well, then get rid of the information. But hold on a second. Couldn't it be the case that people outside of the transgender community might have some interest in environmental justice? Yes, but there's also another order that says justice is stupid because DEI, so take it down for that reason. Well, all right. Except for the fact that both of the orders don't actually represent law and might be above and beyond the president's immediate abilities. Could the president conceivably order that such things be taken down? Well, they did. A president did order it. Well, actually, he probably didn't even get into the specifics to do that. But these people interpreted his order as sanctioning this. But even so, all right, you have people like J.D. Vance now and Ted Cruz and others, people who do, in fact, know better, but should publicly exercise that knowledge and do better with it, say, well, that's a rightful exercise of the president's power, and in fact, judges have no right to get in the way of that. Well, one, wrong. They do have that power. And two, they have that obligation under the Administrative Procedure Act, right? And an administrative office is saying, my interpretation of the president's order is that this needs to come down. Yes. But what do? How do you execute the president's vision? You adhere to the Administrative Procedure Act and say, by order of the president, we're getting set to take this thing down in 30 days, which gives the public a chance to make comment on it and for people to object and for those objections to be adjudicated by who? By courts of law. Right. The very ones that J.D. Vance, for whatever reason, says they don't have the right to do this, have a chance to consider objections to it. But, if you can get past the judges, in 30 days you can take the thing down. Be patient. But they hate patience. And Again, are they blundering? Is the blunder part of the game here to tie up the courts and to fill them up with litigation that they know they're going to lose? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on who you believe. All right, let's finish up the Verge piece here, and then we can get to Darwin's contribution, which I want to save time for before it starts getting too late. So anyway, the agency started taking the web pages down after these stupid orders were issued on his first day in office. The CDC's main data portal went down briefly before going live again with a note saying, data.cdc.gov is temporarily offline in order to comply with the executive order. The court order says web pages are supposed to be restored to versions as of January 30th. The Verge wasn't able to immediately verify whether the restored pages have the same content that they had on January 30th. And therein lies, could lie the rub, certainly, whatever the hell the rub is. But that's the big question. Right? That was the question from the outset for me. Did they restore those websites? Well, the websites are online again. So the answer is yes. No. Wait a minute. Slow down. Be specific. Go through this with a fine-tooth comb before answering the question of whether or not the administration is complying with court orders. Be aware that they will do anything that they can to comply maliciously or to create more confusion. The websites are back up. Do they contain the data? That's actually the question that you answered rather definitively in your headline and lead paragraph. And now, 10 paragraphs in, I find out, we haven't actually verified whether or not the information is there. But there's a picture. You don't get a 404 error anymore when you go to these websites. That's not the issue. The issue is, was the data there? And was the data restored to its previous state as of January 30th? And also, can I just point out, shouldn't it be being restored to January 19th state rather than January 30th? If anything, January 20th. But honestly, I don't really know why the judge balks at ordering it to go back to the January 20th state. I don't know whether, the order's not here for me to take a look at, and I don't know if we'd be able to parse it out even if it did. It may just, interestingly enough, January 30th may be an arbitrary and capricious deadline for all we know, but that's not a test that the court needs to meet. That's the test that the administrators need to meet. Anyway, the plaintiffs claim that removing the data forced DFA members to scramble in search of alternative resources to guide how they treat patients, and also slowed down their clinical practices or reduced the amount of information that they can convey to patients in time-limited visits, and paused or slowed their vital research. They say a temporary restraining order is necessary to protect their practices and public health, while the lawsuit determines whether the defendant's actions were lawful or not. Beyond the web pages named in the lawsuit, the defendants are also supposed to work with DFA to identify any other resources that need to be restored, setting a February 14th deadline, that's Friday and Valentine's Day, for those web pages to become available again. And again, it should not be that the web pages become available. It should be that the data once housed on them, as of, I would have said January 20th, needs to be restored. So lots of gaps for the litigators inside the Trump administration to exploit, and that's problematic. And, I don't know. I don't want to take a particular writer to task about this, but this is the hole in the reporting. This here, at least I can point and say, this is the purpose of the show. Now I remember what the purpose of the show is. Critical reading of the damn news and asking the right questions. And if you just say, I don't know, I trust reporters, and I trust reporters to a certain extent, but yeah, if you just read this thing carefully, knowing that the problem is that they aren't complying with orders, should you make the assumption that they're complying with orders just because they give the appearance of complying with orders? And I can see how you make that mistake, right? In every other case, or several other cases, they've gone out of their way not even to give the appearance of compliance with the orders. So when they do give the appearance of complying with the orders, I know that, your inclination is to mop your brow and say, whew, they finally got them to comply with orders. But did they? Did they? Your own reporting raises the question about whether or not they really did. And you are forced to admit, again, in the 10th paragraph, we didn't actually look to see whether they complied with, the heart of things, the data that they were supposed to restore. But they turned on a website, and you're supposed to be able to depend on this, because if they didn't comply with the order, then you're supposed to be able to go back and petition the court, and the court will hold them in contempt of court or fine them or issue another order saying, no, seriously, we mean it. But, here's a story that was supposed to stand out from the previous reporting that they were defying orders, and establish that, no, you can, in fact, force them to do this stuff. So then you better make sure that they did. And it may turn out that they did. But wouldn't it be a much more interesting story if they were able to say, and we verify it? Now, it will become a very interesting story tomorrow if they follow up on this and say, that part where we say we haven't yet been able to verify, why don't we try to verify and see what kind of story that produces? Because tomorrow's story of we tried to verify it, and guess what? They said they complied. They put the websites back up, but the data isn't there. Wouldn't that be an interesting story? And here I don't know whether I have this story at the ready, but I definitely did see discussed yesterday during that other thing that we've managed to shoehorn in, the joint appearance of Elon Musk, XAEA-XII, and of course the other guy, the deflated basketball looking guy sitting at the desk mumphing through the whole thing, Donald Trump. That one of the things that grew out of that was one of the questions posed to the tall guy that was standing, Elon Musk, was about transparency at Doge. And don't you think you should be transparent because so far you're having difficulty being transparent? No, we are the most transparent ever in history. In fact, he says, that's not true, but in fact, he says that everything Doge does is, one, this is what passes for transparency. One, we post it to the X, or is it the Doge handle? The Doge handle on X, we put it on Twitter. Really, everything that gets done gets put in however many characters you can fit on Twitter. I don't think so. Maybe there's some links, whatever. Then he says everything we do is published on the Doge website, which, again, sounds like a version of transparency that might even be plausible. After all, he owns a website. He's a tech guy. It may, in fact, be the case that they publish everything to a website. Although, as it turns out, people who have then gone to the website have reported seeing essentially blank pages. And in fact, that's all there is. Where did I see this? This part I know I retweeted yesterday from John Cooper. John Cooper lists his bio as a Democratic strategist, former Long Island campaign chair for Barack Obama, and majority leader of the Suffolk County legislature. Did you know that? There's more, but those are the political credentials that he's chosen to list. So anyway, John Cooper posting on Blue Sky the transcript here, and Elon Musk to a reporter saying, quote, "We post our actions to the Doge or Dodgy." I'm getting a lot of appreciative comments about that. I didn't invent the Dodgy pronunciation, but I wish I had made a closer note of the person who passed it on to me as a suggestion. We'll see if I can dig that up. But we post all our actions to the Dodgy website. All of our actions are maximally transparent. He's got a very weird construction to it. I don't know of a case where an organization has been more transparent than the Dodgy organization. I mean, almost everybody. But and how do you know that? Here's the problem. Here is the dodgy.gov website in its entirety, John says. It's literally a blank page. And the screen cap is, in fact, that. It's, I guess, done on a phone format, but a big black screen with a big golden dollar sign in a circle that says Department of Government Efficiency. The people voted for major reform, period, like as though that's their tagline. Up at the top, it says an official website of the United States government. And that's all it is. Now, I don't know whether if you go there, you'll find more information if you click on things. But John says no. John Cooper says that's all there is. So, I mean, if nothing else, transparency or not, it was at least, it seems to be a flat lie. We publish everything to the website. No, you don't. What are you talking about? Okay, I see I'm in danger of running out of time on Darwin's piece for segment 3. Maybe I need to, well, I don't know. I guess the smart thing to do would be say, all right, we'll hold it for segment 4 and we'll do more setup for it. Don't let me forget. It's a good piece, but it was a bit long, and all is forgiven, by the way. I don't mind if there's an interesting and intriguing piece that just sometimes takes us 10 minutes to get through. I can't always guarantee getting it on the air or finding time to do it, or not every 10-minute submission is going to make it. I can say that. But this one I'd love to share. So it's getting on the air this week, even if we run into breaking news, if there's 15 more airline crashes. I don't know if we can do anything else. All right. Oh, there we go. Look, not only have I gotten an answer, but I got an answer in real time on the air, which means you were listening. This is Galfalfa. Is that right? Like alfalfa, but a gal? Am I reading this correctly? Galfalfa, and if you want to find her, I'm guessing, because I can't. Yeah, 1, I don't know. And 2, I can't see anything. But yeah, it looks like Galfalfa. So there we go. Laura is her name. So let's say yes. Galfalfa is the one who suggested, if you are looking for her on Blue Sky, Galfalfa, there's some numbers, 9019. 9019 on Blue Sky. Hey, guess what? Dodgy for Doge was me. Then I deleted the post because I worried it was stupid. Oh, no, don't do that. Okay. Maybe someone else said it but I love that you picked it up. So I'm happy to have picked it up. It's always entirely possible that somebody else had said it before and you don't know, or you did pick it up inadvertently from them, but you forget why. I mean, I only bring it up because I saw earlier today, was it Bruce McFarland saying it to somebody else and saying, I love this pronunciation of the acronym, and I don't know whether it was me, Kagro, or David who said it first, but anyway, everybody should do it. It's fun. And I had to say, no, it wasn't me. Somebody else suggested it, and God, I don't know where it went. And I went looking for it, and now I know why I couldn't find it. It was deleted. Okay, thanks, Galfalfa. I think a good idea. It's going to take some time to transition people to it, and it may be that people don't pick it up, or people think, well, it's too clever by half or whatever. But I think Bruce was talking about it because he was annoyed at the prospect of Elon being gleeful that he was forcing all of America and now I guess all of the world to actually say Doge, which was always a meme, a mimetic, stupid something that, whatever. It represents some sort of victory for him to make everybody talk about this stupid acronym. And look, we have to. But, we might as well have our own fun along the way as well. Whether or not it catches on generally, I don't know, but it's fun for us, like calling the GOP the GOP on the program. And I intend to stick with it, or at least the hybrid of it, as I say, Dodgy/Doge about everything. All right, so let's see. A couple other things we can connect to all of this. As we've made our decision to hold over the Darwin piece for the next segment. Anything else that we want to pull out of the court happenings? Related to the court happenings, I guess. We'll take a look at this piece here, an offering from the Washington Post, an opinion piece by a staid conservative type person, Alan Charles. I don't know whether he says Raoul. It's spelled like Raoul, but I imagine Alan Charles argues for the Raoul pronunciation, but I don't know the guy, so I can't even ask him. But he served as Associate White House Counsel under President Ronald Reagan, many of you have probably heard of him, and as General Counsel of the Office of Management and Budget under Reagan and President George H.W. Bush. Currently serves as board secretary for the Society for the Rule of Law. Did you know there was one? I thought that was called America. And is a lecturer at a law school in Boston. It's Harvard, in case you've heard of it. Anyway, so you can see, a rather staid type of person. And he's writing the Why Dodgy is Unconstitutional piece for us from the conservative old line Republican point of view. Trump is acting extra constitutionally. Now that's very funny. We'll talk about that in a second. Only Congress or the Supreme Court can stop him, at least in the old model. But yeah, Trump is acting extra constitutionally. That's true. And one of those words like flammable, though, for the general public, you and I understand that the fact that he's acting extra constitutionally means that's bad. He's acting outside of his constitutional authority, extra outside of constitutionality. MAGA America, non-MAGA America that just sits and watches the Super Bowl and says, who is this guy doing this rap? I can't understand him, right? Say extra constitutionally. That must be even better than the Constitution. Well, no, let me explain the terminology for you. They would understand Trump is acting unconstitutionally, but it's a term of art, and there's a slight difference, and it's explained here. Something else I was going to say, by the way, along the way, the fact that he had served President Ronald Reagan, I thought it reminded me of the fact we saw a video the other day of them pulling the lettering, the sign off of the building front, the entrance to the to USAID. They had workers up there on one of those cherry pickers prying the letters off, actually defacing the building. The building, by the way, is the Ronald Reagan Federal Office Building. So I just wanted to let you know that Republicans were ordering the vandalism and defacing of the Ronald Reagan Building. And I thought that was a little weird. This story, though, President Donald Trump, his appointees, acting officials, and quasi-official outsiders, big balls, Elon, AXEI 25, whatever, are in the midst of a radical restructuring or termination of government employees, agencies, and programs. Whether this is in all, many, or some regards desirable is debatable. Also debatable is whether the 49.8% of the electorate who elected Trump want all of this, and whether the 50.2% who voted for Kamala Harris or a third-party candidate want any of it. And by the way, it should probably be noted somewhere along the line that as far back as Reagan, I think, there were plenty of Republicans saying we should close and dismantle the Department of Education. It's an old Republican idea, probably had champions inside both of the administrations for which this guy worked, but they didn't do it. So what is not debatable, however, is that Congress has not authorized this radical overhaul, and the protocols of the Constitution do not permit statutorily mandated agencies and programs to be transformed or reorganized out of existence without congressional authorization. The people who made it are the people who are empowered to unmake it, and nobody else. That's my too long didn't read for you. The Constitution is well known to interpose meaningful checks and balances and a separation of powers among the responsibilities of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. It is also well understood that the respective branches' powers and duties will intersect and overlap. Fundamentally, however, all legislative power belongs to Congress and all executive power to the president. The judiciary steps in when the parameters of shared authority get complicated or confusing and constitutional lines are crossed. This is the whole point of why J.D. Vance and his claim that judges are not authorized to opine in any way on executive power is so astonishing. The radical reorganization now underway is not just foot-faulting over procedural lines. It is a shattering of the fundamental checks and balances of our constitutional order. The dodgy process, if that's what it is, mocks two basic tenets of our government: that we are a nation of laws, not men, and that it is Congress which controls spending and passes legislation. You know, when he says not men, well, He doesn't enclose it in quotes. That's an old line conservative saying. The president must faithfully execute Congress's laws and manage the executive agencies consistent with the Constitution and lawmakers' appropriations, not by any divine right or absolute power or anything of the sort, right? Where the president identifies policy areas that need reform or spending that needs to be supplemented, reduced, or eliminated, for instance, the Constitution empowers him to recommend such measures as he finds necessary or expedient to Congress for it to dispose of one way or another, or alternatively, ignore. He can do that, and he controls both houses, and with an iron fist at that. They're all afraid to oppose him, apparently. Why isn't he just suggesting it? No one knows. All right, well, we'll continue with this discussion to some extent on the other side of the break, plus Darwin's segment coming up next. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's, I guess the smart thing to do is to finish up what we were reading from the Washington Post and keep a close eye on the clock. I really don't want to miss this, and we need some time set aside for Darwin here. As we were saying, as we were reading this piece about the reason, the explanation, we keep saying that these moves are unconstitutional, or if you get the term, extra constitutional. Why is that? It's not just, hey, that's a bad thing, and you leave it at that. The Republicans do that. We try and explain the reasons for it. Where the president identifies policy areas that need reform or spending that needs to be changed in some way, let's say, he can make such recommendations of those measures as he finds necessary or expedient, thanks to the Constitution's language there, make those suggestions to Congress for it to do this one way or the other, or alternatively to ignore that suggestion. Yes, the president may advance his own policy agenda, including, of course, the ability to recommend reforms to Congress that he believes necessary or expedient, but there is no reading of the Constitution that allows any president to claim that a political mandate, even if you don't have one, whether you have it or not, supposing you do have it, Trump does not by any measure, but suppose he did, it doesn't matter. There is no reading of the Constitution that allows a president to claim that a political mandate or a political promise made during the campaign obviates or supersedes the role of Congress. Like, duh, of course. It is the House and Senate that, quote, from the Constitution, make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for, among other things, the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. Okay. Even under the most aggressive view of the president's unitary executive control over the entire executive branch and independent agencies, it is Congress's sole authority to appropriate and legislate for our entire government. The president basically directs the executive branch within the contours prescribed by Congress. subject to constitutional checks and balances. To be sure, the president and Congress share policy responsibility because the president recommends budgets and necessary and expedient measures to Congress, whose bills the president can sign into law or veto. But in the end, the president is constitutionally stuck with the policies for the federal government that Congress enacts and appropriates. No one man person in America is the law, not even a Trump or an Elon Musk. So, how can the radical overhaul Trump and Musk are undertaking be reconciled with our constitutional order? Quite simply, it cannot be. Sorry. Trombone for you guys. Congress must step in to enact this radical transformation, or the Supreme Court must stop it. In the past several years, the court has provided unmistakable direction that Congress and not the executive determines the scope and policy for the country. The court even narrowed the president's previously long-held entitlement to deference when interpreting ambiguous laws and policies. Specifically, the Trump-Musk quest for government efficiency is led by a, quote, department that Congress did not establish, by unelected operatives who exercise overwhelming authority without appointment under the Appointments Clause, who are not subject, apparently, to any checks and balances, who are not faithfully executing the laws Congress has appropriated and legislated, and who are in the process of eliminating whole agencies, programs, and millions of employees without any congressional authorization whatsoever. And they are doing so without explaining or recommending such measures to Congress or to the public, for that matter, right? And not even publishing on a website at that point. It's an interesting point, by the way, to bring out. The people who have taken no oath to support or defend the Constitution of the United States, no matter what enemies you're supposed to defend it against. We all know how the phrasing goes. These guys have taken no oath, and they are firing all the people who have taken oaths. That doesn't seem like it should be working. You guys are unofficial. You can't fire the official people till you're official. And we don't know if you're official yet. If all of this is not a major question for Congress, and remember that's enclosed in quotes, what is that? The major question doctrine, the stupid thing that was invented in the last term by the Supreme Court as the sorts of things in which they should be stepping in, or that only Congress can give direction for. They have to be explicit about things if it's a major question. If all this is not a major question for Congress to decide with respect to the impact and consequence for America, then nothing is. This dodgy usurpation of the constitutional order cannot be squared with the Supreme Court's 2022 decision in West Virginia versus EPA. In that case, the justices struck down a Clean Air Act interpretation of the Biden administration on the grounds that it was a major question of profound political and economic significance to the country at large, and that Congress had not clearly authorized those impacts, so therefore it can't work. If Congress doesn't specifically authorize major questions like this, then they're not real. They're not laws. That's what's happening now. The dodgy transformation of America contemplates a much more profound change without any authorization by the people's representatives at all. Granted, all the Republicans in Congress, I'll add, would give their assent if asked. So then ask them. What are you waiting for? You don't have the votes to do it. It's not real. The judicial branch cannot allow this profound political and economic program to proceed without clear congressional authorization, which to this point has been completely absent. The fact that Trump was duly elected president does not displace the role of Congress to pass laws and set policy, and the fact that some or even much of the Trump-Musk transformation might be desirable, it isn't, does not make it constitutional. Campaign promises requiring legislation do not become laws unless and until Congress says so. Thus, the Republican and Democratic appointed judges who have recently reined in the U.S. Dodgy Service, as they now call it, have not rejected the Trump administration's quest for efficiency or reorganization, but rather they're just insisting on holding the executive branch to the longstanding constitutional, statutory, and administrative rules. I would add at this point, it's not that they have to say so, right? There isn't quite it's not quite like that. Campaign promises requiring legislation do not become law unless and until Congress says so. That doesn't mean they can have a press conference and say so. It means the two houses have to hold a public vote and both agree on the same version of saying so. Bicameralism, presentment, all of those things that are required by the Constitution. They don't just have press conferences and say, well, if you asked me formally, I would agree. Then ask them. That's how you prove it. What Trump may do is follow the Constitution, that is Article 2, Section 3, and law, that would be specifically 31 U.S. Code Section 1111, by identifying and recommending major questions for Congress to answer. In the absence of any congressional authorization, the federal judiciary must rein in the lawless agencies or officials when they overreach without congressional authority. Moreover, federal judges may no longer defer to extraordinarily expansive interpretations of executive branch authority under Dodgy or otherwise. The Supreme Court laid down that rule clearly in 2024 when it decided Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo. That case famously, I think you would have to put that in quotes, famously overruled the so-called Chevron deference, holding that it is the judiciary, not the executive, that gets to decide the right interpretation of the laws that Congress has enacted. If the United States is to be transformed by Dodgy, the President, Congress, and Supreme Court all have some work to do first. True, but can you make them do it? And I guess the too long didn't read, even though you just read it. I guess the compact version of that, for our purposes, a good interpretation of what got said to you, all valid. Where I guess the Republican interpretation of things fails is this. He cited a couple of recent Supreme Court precedents which, if applied equally as the law is supposed to be applied, would mean, well, if there's no Chevron deference anymore, well, then there's no deference to President Trump's interpretation of the law, just as it was decided by the Supreme Court, the Republican radical right Supreme Court, that there's no more deference to President Biden's interpretation, so there's no more deference to President Trump's, right? No, we don't actually apply the law evenly and equitably and equally to everyone. It's not being equally applied. That was never our intent. We absolutely intended secretly to allow Republicans to get away with stuff and to hold Democrats in check. So we got that problem. Same thing with the major questions doctrine. It was designed to make a Democratic administration stumble and lose power. Should it be applied equally to a Republican administration? You would have thought so. That's the usual rule. That's the judicial canon. Certain of the Republican members of the Supreme Court would probably have said, yes, we do need to do that. The problem is that certain members of the Supreme Court would also say no, because I don't want to. I want Republicans to be able to do stuff and Democrats not to be. And as the case may call for it, that's how I'll rule. That's the real problem we're facing. This guy assumes that the law will be applied equally to presidents of both parties. I don't think they're actually going to do that. It won't make sense. There won't be any logic behind it. They won't even be able to come up with a good fake reason for it. And when they really hit the wall with it, one of two things will happen. If you're lucky, Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts will say, this is too damn embarrassing. I can't make this work. Sorry, I can't help you. The other possibility is, I can't make this work. This is too embarrassing and I can't help you. But I'm going to okay an unsigned opinion that gives no reasoning and let that go instead. Either say, I will put my name to a dissent, or rather, hopefully, to a holding of the court, a 5-4 holding of the court with the 3 liberal justices. This is just too much for us. It's too embarrassing. I won't sign on to this. Or it will be a 6-3 unsigned ruling that gives no explanation, but just says the Republican guy gets what he wants, even though that flies in the face of our recently created precedent to which we were only too happy to sign our names a year or two ago. It's fully possible. All right, I better get to Darwin's segment. It's now time to transition to that. If you have any doubts about what happened in the Super Bowl halftime show, whether you were able to recite lyrics along with them or not, if you could recite the lyrics, you probably understand it. It's just basically that it comes down to this. There was a gigantic segment, in fact, a huge majority, I would say, of people who were watching the Super Bowl who understood everything and appreciated it very differently, and appreciated it at all. And then a weirdo MAGA segment that didn't. And then, of course, the weirdo normies like me who were like, well, okay, I don't know the lyrics, but, you know, it shouldn't upset you that this was the halftime show. It was a halftime show. None of them make sense. But what was, of course, happening here is white MAGA America was saying, oh, why isn't this a country act? Why isn't this Kid Rock? Why don't I know these lyrics? Why don't they put on a show that I want? And the answer is, you're old, and it's time to put on a show that other people want, who are younger than you are, and everybody younger than you knows what's going on. All right, let's let Darwin take it from here. Thank you for sending us this segment, Darwin.
Hello, David. Hello, KITM fam. This is Darwin Darko reporting today as the, let's call it, senior hip-hop correspondent. A lot of you may have watched the halftime show at the Super Bowl and were completely left out in the wilderness, not knowing what the heck is going on and why it was such a big deal. But I'm here to shed some light into that. There's going to be a lot of references here that you're just going to have to Google it. I can't do all the homework for you. Writing up in CNN, Scotty Andrew gives us an article here. Not Like Us started as a diss. Now it's a Super Bowl anthem. Kendrick Lamar and Drake spent last spring trading disses. The rappers unleashed a slew of increasingly brutal attack tracks, taking aim at each other's talent, parenting, and race, among other sensitive subjects. It wasn't until Lamar released Not Like Us that a verdict was rendered. Lamar was unequivocally the winner. Not Like Us is still taking a victory lap that began last May. Lamar's final Drake diss topped the Billboard charts and became his first solo #1 single since 2017's Humble. At a surprise Juneteenth concert, Lamar performed the song 5 times to an arena full of fans who knew every word. Then last week, he took home 5 Grammys for the track, including Song of the Year. And on Sunday night, he performed it at the Super Bowl, the most watched event in American TV. Parenthetically, they write, even though the song is currently at the center of a lawsuit brought by Drake against the company that runs both rappers' record labels. He included some of his most controversial lines in his performance. Not Like Us was introduced to the world unceremoniously in a YouTube link on a Saturday evening. That it's since become one of Lamar's biggest songs is a testament to its staying power, not just as a diss, but a certified banger. As much as it is a diss song, it's also a unifying song, said Frederick Page, an assistant professor of civil and environmental engineering at Virginia Tech and co-founder of Virginia Tech Digging into Crates Hip-Hop Studies at the university. Here's how a hard-hitting diss became a blockbuster of super proportions. The beef between the two of the country's best-loved rappers had been brewing for years before Not Like Us erupted. Though they featured on each other's songs early in their careers, the two have exchanged sneak disses over several years. Lines so cryptic, even their fans couldn't agree who they were about. Their beef started boiling again in October 2023 when J. Cole referred to himself, Drake, and Lamar as the, quote, big 3 of rap. Lamar disagreed. There's only one big me, he said in the future Metro Boomin song Like That, released last March. Drake started to catch stray insults from artists like Future and The Weeknd, a fellow Toronto native, but the Lamar hit stung. So in April, Drake dropped Push-Ups, mocking Lamar's features on songs from Maroon 5 and Taylor Swift. Lamar responded with Euphoria, a vicious track that prodded the perceived insecurities of the Canadian rapper, including numerous references to his race. Each new song escalated the tension, which eventually grew so thick that the rappers took mere hours to respond with a new attack. The verbal brawl effectively ended, though, when Lamar dropped Not Like Us. In it, Lamar accuses Drake of being attracted to underage girls, certified PDF files, if you will. Drake has vehemently denied that accusation. In his defamation lawsuit against UMG Records Incorporated, the company that owns both Drake and Lamar's record labels, Drake accused UMG of launching a campaign to make a viral hit out of a rap track that falsely accuses Drake of being a PDF file and calls for violent retribution against him. You know the Michelle Obama quote, "When they go low, we go high," Page said. They went in the basement. The degree of dirt and allegations made it tough. Though Drake released another song after Not Like Us, the war was already won. It didn't take long for the charts and streamers to catch up. Not Like Us became inescapable in what felt like a matter of hours. It's been viewed nearly 200 million times on YouTube and took off on TikTok and traditional radio. Less than 2 weeks after its release, Not Like Us clinched a top spot on the Billboard Hot 100. Lamar had everyone from middle schoolers on the dance floor at a bar mitzvah to former VP Harris at the BET Awards quoting his single. "I see dead people," Lamar whispers at the track's opening. Aside from the devilish glee with which he delivers his blows, it's not your typical missive from a hater, Page said. It sounds like a party from the first beat drop. It's a super catchy tune that you wouldn't expect to be a diss track, he said. It doesn't sound that aggressive. It's also intensely catchy and quotable, though most of its blows can't be repeated here, said Craig Arthur, an associate professor of practice at Virginia Tech and DJ, who also co-founded the university's hip-hop studies program. Even its slight chorus, in which Lamar chants the words, "They Not Like Us," repeatedly over a slick mustard beat that took the producer only 30 minutes to cook up, is an earworm. Typically, the subject matter of a song like Not Like Us is controversial enough that an industry body like the Recording Academy would avoid rewarding it. But the song's impact was so immediate and undeniable based on its more than 1 billion streams and consistent chart placement that even the Grammys, music outlets, and celebrities who have previously been friendly with Drake celebrated it. Lamar has also earned enormous respect from both rap fans and the artistic establishment, which might explain why the song has been so widely embraced, both professors said. Routinely referred to as the best rapper alive, a title to which many of his peers have laid claim, he's won 22 Grammys, making him one of the most awarded rappers in the award show's history. And in 2018, he became the first rapper to win the Pulitzer Prize for music for his album, Damn, my favorite album, actually. Not Like Us came from a highly decorated MC that even folks far outside of hip-hop look up to, Arthur said. Kendrick can do things artistically that a lot of commercial mainstream rappers and MCs can never do. When it's not taking shots at Drake, Not Like Us is an homage to West Coast hip-hop. It's a rejection, too, of culture vultures who appropriate the culture of a hip-hop community without belonging to it, Page said. Its music video honored Lamar's Compton roots. Behind-the-scenes footage shows he was received like a hometown hero. Lamar's disses against Drake worked because he took aim at Drake's perceived inauthenticity, both professors said, and a lack of connection to a homegrown rap scene like Lamar's community in Compton or in Atlanta, where many Drake's previous collaborations are from. Though Drake's poppier hip-hop strategy has perhaps alienated him from some of his peers, it's also cemented him as one of the most famous rappers on earth. Lamar's targeting Drake so publicly was intentional too. I think Lamar took on Drake for a very particular reason. In terms of that fan base and that outreach to grow, Lamar's fan base and show that real artistry, in his opinion and authenticity, win over the circus tricks. That was a weird formulation there, but Lamar is an inspired choice for the Super Bowl halftime show. Both professors said that Lamar's subject matter spans his experiences growing up in public housing to institutionalized anti-black racism and police brutality. It's really interesting to think about a song like All Right, which is seen as a protest song, and then go to the Super Bowl. What is the chess move there? Lamar teased the opening beats of Not Like Us a few times before finally starting the song late into his halftime set. Before he finally performed it, he referred to it as the crowd's favorite song. "Are you really going to do it?" his backup dancers asked at one point. Lamar included one of the most widely quoted lyrics from the song in his performance. Trying to strike a chord, but it's probably, and everybody in the crowd yells, A minor. Double entendre, if you will. There had been questions about whether Lamar would include the song in his performance considering Drake's lawsuit against UMG. In his lawsuit against the company, Drake accused the label of defamation in the publishing and promotion of Not Like Us. Lamar isn't named as a defendant in the suit, by the way. The inclusion of Not Like Us isn't the only reason Lamar's performance mattered for his fans. Being human and surviving tough times are central themes in Lamar's work. In between his rappers' braggadocio, there are a lot of people right now that are struggling with their political shifts, trying to figure out where we're going to go, how we're going to take care of ourselves and each other, he said. I'm interested in seeing how Kendrick's takes on that challenge to motivate and excite people for not only the second half of football, but for many years to come. Okay, that was a mouthful. Thanks for listening. There are a ton of references, like I said there. And yes, I intentionally said PDF when I referred to that word because of, you may have some monetization issues on YouTube or something like that, but I'm not sure. So there's a lot of nuggets. I suggest, particularly for the white folks, that there's references in rap lingo that they may not be familiar with. This is your chance to, tap into the culture a little bit and learn to appreciate. You'll probably learn to appreciate the Super Bowl halftime show a little bit more with that insight. So yeah, thanks for listening. Darwin Darko here, signing out. Back to you, David.
Thanks, Darwin. That was pretty funny. And yeah, that's right. You heard it right. The white folks might need to get educated. I did, right? So one, don't be afraid of it. And two, if you love it because it's the delicious, forbidden DEI, oh my gosh, you have to look at diverse viewpoints and come to understand what 150 million American viewers, apparently, whatever the number was, enjoyed immensely, but you had no idea about, well, yeah, expand your mind a little bit. There were a lot of great points made in that article and brought to light. Thanks again. You know what really struck me as different in, I guess, something that I didn't understand culturally in the way entertainment is presented these days. The point of Lamar performing the song 5 times in a single concert, like. That to me, like, I'd be like, well, we already heard this song. Is this a mistake? Why are we hearing this song again? The traditional white pop or rock band presentation of a concert. Different in style and motivation, I guess, there. That too, something. Also, the speed with which the diss tracks are dispatched these days. Like, that too didn't really occur to me. Well, most music distributed online these days, and then very often in form of a YouTube video, and they don't spend, old school MTV style videos would take months to produce. They were mini films, right? And putting a new track down and releasing it, was months and months of studio work. And now you just put down a beat and rap it and do it in a couple of hours. And on the one hand, I'm sure that, people who are dismissing this as an art form are saying, well, you didn't even put any time and effort into it. You just do it in a matter of minutes. Yeah, but that's the interest and beauty in it. I talk about engaging your audience, that you might only have to wait a couple of hours to hear a response to something like this. Is kind of an amazing new world. I found that very interesting. And then, of course, I've seen a lot of now. There's now a cottage industry of interpreting the song and the dispute, or I'm using stupid, outdated our terminology for it, but the beef, what have you. Right, being interpreted, and then the use of this song and what it means to use it in the Super Bowl, to award it in the Grammys, as noted in the piece, and this additional layer of meaning. Not Like Us has 150 million fans tune in and love it, and some number of tens of millions of MAGA types out there saying, well, I don't get it, it's stupid, they shouldn't have it, doesn't make any sense. Everybody knows that this shouldn't be. Yeah, well, as it turns out, there's a lot of people not like us. And I guess it's you guys. You're the weirdos in all of this. Really a fascinating story on a million levels. So thank you for bringing it to us. I've been spending some time just trying to figure out, let me read the chronology of this whole thing just so I understand. I understand that there is this problem. I understand that there was this trading that was going on. I understood it to be to have been lost when, in what I read, it had been lost at the moment that you say, yeah, I'm going to settle this with a lawsuit. That's not usually part of this kind of exchange. That seemed to have been the nail in the coffin. But I guess it was even earlier than that. It was just, this is just too good a song, and people want to play it because it's fun and a good song and they like it, and whether or not it's insulting to you doesn't actually matter. It was very interesting, fascinating. Lots of other things that we didn't have time for today, of course, but I definitely wanted to shoehorn this in before it got stale. We got the rest of the week to discuss the rest of the things, and there's an awful lot of them, including, I guess, one thing I'll try and squeeze in there. I noticed Joyce White-Vance picking up on ASIN's dissection of yesterday's session in the Oval Office with Elon and Sun and Trump. A question posed to, I guess, to Musk, which was kind of funny because this one probably should have been posed to Trump, and maybe it was, but Elon answered. A reporter shouting out, hey, you said that there was this example of fraud that you guys had identified, meaning $50 million of condoms sent to Gaza, or as Trump put it, $100 million sent to Hamas. But after a fact check, apparently it was Gaza and Mozambique and meant to protect them against HIV. And Musk's answer to this, I mean, I guess this is the only way you can answer it, right? It's rather flippant. Well, first of all, some of the things I say will be incorrect. Like, that should be it, right? As Joyce White-Vance put it, we're done here, right? No, apparently not. But I thought that was a good note for it on the record. Yeah, some of the things he says are going to be incorrect. By the way, where did I find out that information about the most watched TV programs of all time? Not just the halftime shows, but according to Nielsen ratings history, an estimated 125 to 150 million people watched the moon landing. It's quite possible that Kendrick Lamar's halftime show is the most viewed television event in history, or at the very least number 2, Michael Harriot. With that, and I know a favorite of Darwin, so I thought would be a good follow-up to shoehorn that in there. Looks like, yeah, the Super Bowl halftime show with 123.4 million viewers, it is estimated. Only Apollo 11 possibly surpassing that one. With, I guess, a little bit of wiggle room either way. At least number 2. I'll take the number 2 most witnessed event in history. Yeah, and I think he will too. All right, we sign off and hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next.
NetrootsRadio.com.
Right here on NetrootsRadio.com.
You have been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
He'll be covering Elon's crash and burning over basic questioning, as his 4-year-old pissed Trump off in the Oval Office. What else? Reuters won the first major artificial intelligence copyright case in the United States, and you should hear the ruling in that one. I want to talk about that one too. I've got Park, but you can hear it first with Justice next.